Here we go.
All right, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Phys Ed Summit. I am William Bodie, and I'm out here in Matthews, North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, for those of you who don't know where Matthews is. And it is really early in the morning, but I know there's some troopers out there on Tazel. And hi, Bo. Hi, Sarah. Hope you're drinking your wild cherry Pepsi. So a couple of things. This is a free online conference that PE teachers put on for PE teachers. And we love what we do because what we do impacts kids. And a lot of our other sessions we were talking about, we're game changers. We're out here to and spending our time watching sessions, learning from others so we can impact the kids that we teach every day. So I still got my pink shirt on. I am rocking it. I did change. It's not smelly or anything, not that you could tell. But we're having a great time here at the Phys Ed Summit, and I've got a great guy, Tim Morgan, out in New Zealand, and it's got some really great things to talk to you about. We've had a couple conversations over the week, and really excited to let you hear what he has to share. So I'm going to share it with him. I did write on a Tazel, if you are live, that if there are any issues with his presentation on your end, that you try to refresh your page, or if you can, get to Chrome. Google Chrome tends to be the browser that has the least amount of issues. And as always with tech, if we have it on our end, just be patient. We will get back online really fast. And this is interactive, so if you've got some questions for Tim, please ask, and we will answer them right here live on our broadcasts. All right, Tim, buddy,
Okay.
it is all
Cool.
you.
It's all me. Okay. Well, hello. Yeah, I'm Tim. I'm sitting in my 8-year-old son's bedroom from New Zealand. We've had a number of earthquake little reminders today, and so he's sleeping in our bed, and I'm in his bedroom. So my arrangement that I was planning hasn't quite worked out. So forgive the backdrop. That is a stick-on moustache on the wall. So anyway, what I'll do is I will just go screen share, because it's all the techie stuff that sort of freaks me out a bit. So hopefully, William, you can just let me know that it's going. What are you looking at now? So am I screen sharing now?
You are good to go.
Oh, righto. So then I want to go view, and boom, hopefully. Okay, I'll just go back a slide.
Nothing. There you go.
Cool. Okay, so I've called this presentation "Wrapping the Real World Around a Game-Centered Approach." I think it was worded slightly differently in the program, but basically what I've experimented with in the last while is quite unique. I think even just to me, it's not really just a New Zealand way of thinking. I'm sort of out on my own little fringe as well, and so the title is really referring to the change in the way PE has been taught. When I first started teaching, which was maybe 20 years ago, it was very skills driven. So we were doing, sport based units, hockey and tennis and soccer. Then we got into the whole TGfU kind of thinking, where we kind of grouped our activities around the like strategies and like skills. It still hasn't rung true for me, really, because for me, even TGfU, while it's relevant and applies to more kids, it doesn't actually apply to their adult life. And so what I've tried to do with some of this work, and what I want to talk to you about today, is the idea of helping these kids grow into adults that value and prioritize physical activity. Whereas TGfU, for me, if we just teach TGfU, I think it still has a sporting endpoint, when for me, a lot of the end point for these kids is actually recreation and play and just the joy of movement. So that's where we're going. The photos you've got on the screen here are just a couple. I led a project last year where I got some money from the government here to lead 4 schools and do something a bit interesting, which hopefully we can share with you. So in New Zealand, when we meet, we usually try and connect with where we're from within our country, and so there's a thing called a mihi, ngā mihi, and it's just a way of Māori people really, but in New Zealand we speak Māori and English. Not many people speak Māori very well. But this is my mihi. Kia ora koutou, ko Tim tōku ingoa no o te tai ahau, no Waimakariri te awa, no Auraki te maonga, ko Papakohatu tōku kura, no reira tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And that's really just what it's meaning there, that I'm from New Zealand, a small little part of New Zealand. Our mountain is Mount Cook, and I'm the deputy principal. Will, is that like the second in charge? What's that called in an American school? Is that?
Yeah, I would say that's an assistant principal.
Yep. So our school is it's a little school. We have 130 kids. We go, the oldest kids are 10, and they go off to what you would call junior high. And our kids are from a lower socioeconomic area. And so the photos we've got around here, the bottom one here is my place. This is Littleton Harbour in Christchurch. So this is where we are. These are our All Blacks. New Zealand is a rugby-driven mad country. Rugby is a bit like American football, but we don't wear pads, helmets. We don't pass the ball forward. You're only allowed to pass the ball backwards. And pretty much we beat everyone. Up the top here is the equivalent sort of girl sport, female sport, although men do play it as well, netball, which is a bit like basketball, but you can't bounce the ball and there's no backboard. So I think it might be a bit like handball, except instead of throwing it into a goal, you throw it into a hoop. Might be a good way to explain it. And then we've got it's a very English kind of background. And then this photo here is really just, it puts us in some context. So as I say, 5 years ago, our city pretty much fell apart in a major earthquake. And we've had reminders ever since, including today. And because of that, our kids are incredibly connected to their community. They're very, very committed to building it back and having fun places to play. And our local council has actually prioritised green space when we rebuild. So our city planning has actually prioritised a huge percentage of sporting fields and recreational facilities, effectively building our city smaller with more play areas. So that just puts us in a wee bit of a context. So this is who I am. These are my roles. I teach, but I used to work for our university as a travelling consultant kind of person, and then government priorities shifted. PE no longer got money, and so I still kept getting asked for help by schools, and so I've made a bunch of websites. I do a whole heap of staff meetings and that sort of thing, and I've put a few links on that tozzle there if you want to have a bit of a look. The passwords, there's no charge for this stuff. I have a password so that people have to get in touch so I know who's actually using it. So just click contact and ask for the passwords. And so, yeah, and then we run this, I've run this little Facebook kind of group that's gradually growing, basically because the ideas that I'm going to share today are not really in any books. They're just things that have started to work for me. So we'll get into it. So what I want to do is look at why you would bother trying to connect the real world with a game. So the thinking is that, my thinking is that if you have a typical game, that game is usually kind of a simulation of a sport, and that sport is probably only applicable to a small percentage of your class. So for instance, if I chose to teach a rugby unit to my class, not all of them are going to end up wanting to know rugby. That might change my thinking, and I want to teach an invasion games unit to my class instead. That kind of thinking means I'm probably only going to be interesting to the kids that actually plan to play sport in their adult life. And so instead, what I've decided to do is hang we have four terms, 4 blocks of schooling in our calendar year. I've blocked the 4 into these 4 powerful headings. So one is Haora. Haora is the concept of general well-being. So we want to, through games and TGfU, we want to wrap around some talking and thinking around physical, spiritual, social, and interpersonal well-being. Another term, we want to look at things like attitudes and values, resilience and perseverance, and being able to laugh at yourself, the joy found in effort, that sort of thing. So we might choose to merge our TGfU contexts. So we might do some striking and fielding in the same unit as an invasion game. Which is perhaps a little bit different. It's definitely different to the way New Zealand schools use TGfU. A third unit, we wrap the idea of health promotion, and we look at our community and how can we send messages around increasing physical activity. And the kids are involved in this. It's not a resource written. It's literally kids getting involved. And the fourth one is designed to get kids to recognise the connection between their community and themselves. So, for instance, if the school doesn't have bike stands, guess what? The kids are less likely to bike to school. So the kids are starting to recognise that some of their choices are manipulated or shaped not just by their own attitudes. Okay, and so for me, basically what we're trying to do is to take a TGfU unit and make it more relevant, make it more engaging, more meaningful, make the thinking transferable to other subjects such as social sciences. And we're talking about these kids as adults. So through these big picture units, wrapping a project, if you like, around a TGfU unit, we're having a chance to teach or to experience the skills that adults in the physical activity industry actually use. For instance, in New Zealand, we have sports trusts. I think they're probably a bit like the kind of organisation that Naomi, I gather, kind of works in, this sort of shape, what's that called? Shape US or something? I've read this idea of another group that helps schools but also helps clubs and tries to connect the local hospitals and that sort of thing. The skills that you need to work in those types of organisations are not the skills that TGfU teaches. So someone with a passion for physical activity and general well-being, their opportunity to learn about it is PE, yet often what's put in front of the kids is actually a sporting coaching thing. And so what I'm trying to do is to suggest a way where even local government kind of attitudes and values can be demonstrated. So here we go. Here's a unit. I want to talk through two of the units and give you some games and talk about that, and just hint at two, because that takes quite a while. So the first unit, I do this in term 1. It's called Haora, and it's the idea that we want our classes to learn about themselves, to learn about how they can improve the well-being of every member of their class, their holistic well-being, and to notice the type of class they are. So I go through 4 stages. One is we just notice. We notice how we are as a class. Then we look at things that matter in a game setting, rules, court size, choice of equipment, systems for inclusion. We look at the way we're taking turns and rotating jobs and so on. And then the final bit is, if they have time, they also ask the question, well, why would you want to coach? Why would you want to be a spectator? What do you get out of being a referee, etc.? And there's a couple of key tools, sort of thinking tools, a Haora spider web, and we use this idea of the conflict resolution model, which is really just what's good about this game, who's getting a good deal, what's bad about this game, who's getting a bad deal, and let's fix it. And when we talk about TGfU, all I'm talking about is small-sided games, differentiated for the abilities, and lots of questioning. Okay, so we'll just go through there. If you click this link, it takes you to the website I'm talking about. And actually, I think, there you go, the password's written there as well. Okay, so we'll just keep going. So this is a typical game. I won't push play because it'll be a 3-minute little video, but if you want to watch this back, you can. Basically, this game, you want the kids to start to notice the choices they make. So it works like this. It's called sitting on the grass. You put the kids all sitting on chairs in a circle, and you have a spare chair kind of here in the gap. Okay, and when you say go, the two people either side of the gap have to rush to sit on the seat that's spare. So in this case, it's Santa Claus and whatever that is, an ant or something. So I say go, and they both move. So Santa might actually win, and he gets on the chair. Okay, and the ant would just have to sit back down. Santa says, I like. That's all Santa does. However, this little princess also moves the chair over and says, sitting on the grass. And then the Lorax moves over as well and says with, and the Lorax has to pick another person, maybe the Hulk, and the Hulk would have to come over and sit on the seat that the Lorax has left empty. Okay, that's pretty complicated, but yeah, push play and I move the characters around a bit. So basically, the Lorax had to decide who to name. Okay, now the Lorax could have picked other Loraxes, could have picked other boys, could have picked other cartoon characters, and so on. Also, you have to point out that sometimes they just pick the person directly opposite. Okay, so they're not thinking much. They're just playing. The game continues. Once the Hulk has moved to this chair, there's a new gap created, and in this case, it's the bug and the mouse would race to sit on the chair, and so on. And so if you play that for a little while, you start to build up patterns of who's picking who, and you just want the kids to notice, to recognize the natural discrimination that happens in a school setting. That's the first step to building up some empathy. Okay, so then what we do, this is a Hawara spider web. So what we do is we ask the kids to reflect on the game and give it a score. So if it was physical and really physical, they would give it a 3, way out here on the outer circle. If it was really challenging, also a 3. Maybe it was a 1 right in the middle here. Fun, some games, weirdly enough, aren't fun. Kids don't think they're fun. It's the teacher loved it, but the kids didn't. And social, did it actually let you interact, and so on. And so you end up with possibly a really big diamond, or you might end up with a small diamond if it's a bad game, or you might end up with some sort of other shape. Okay, and here's an example of what some of the kids did here. We played 4 different games and we just compared them all. All right, and then I asked them to change color and remark it. So they've marked it for themselves. Then I get them to perhaps put themselves in the shoes of another person in the game, perhaps a person that wasn't involved, didn't get chosen, and then remark it. Okay, and then the challenge over the term is to correct the game, to make it more perfect, and we use this sort of spiderweb thing quite a lot. Okay, so that's really the shape of the whole term. So here's a game. I love this game. Bat down. It's a bit like softball. Basically, I have a class of 30 kids, so I'm playing six versions of this game. The first time, the kids just get into groups of 5. One person hits the ball, the other 4 run off, and whoever gets the ball first has to try and roll it back at the bat. If they hit the bat, they're in. If they don't hit the bat, the batter gets another turn. Is there a game like that you play, Will? Have you heard of something like that? No? Okay.
Well, I think we call it roll the bat. I think that we had talked about before. We call it roll the bat.
Roll the bat. Yeah.
But it's funny, we don't play that organized here.
Yeah. So for me, the idea of this first game is to put the kids in a situation where it's not that great, because the slow kid will never get a turn. Basically, the kid that can't roll the ball will never get a turn at batting. And what we want the class to start to recognize is that actually that kid's fun is in control of the whole group. Your fun is actually my responsibility. And that's the type of thing we start working through. So the second time I get them to play, we have a little chat about who's had a good deal, who's had a bad deal. So then we go out and play it again, and this time we put in a batting order, so that even if you're the person who rolls the ball and hits the bat, you're not necessarily the person who goes into bat. It's just done by batting order. And so that way, the kid who's not the fastest or not the most sporty is still going to get a turn and isn't that likely to quit. They're probably quite likely to stay and be involved in the game. Okay. Then the third version, remembering TGfU thinking, so probably before the third version, we would have quite a skills-based lesson where we teach them to roll or hit or whatever seems really useful. Or I might have stopped with just one group and done a little skills lesson there. So then the last version is where where the batter hits the ball, and while the kids are running after it, the batter runs in the other direction with the bat, so that when the ball's picked up, they're actually miles away from each other, and so all of it, and then the kid can't roll it at the bat, so instead they have to throw it to each other until they're close enough to get to the bat and have a successful roll. So basically, we've started the lesson in a competitive game, everyone against everyone, and we've ended in a cooperative game. And then we go back to those spider webs and we compare the first version to the third version. So we have done nothing to the skills involved in the game, to anything in the game other than sort of the structure of the game, and somehow we've changed the experience and the enjoyment that everyone gets from this game. It's a bit like exploring why you would have a different tee for men and women in golf, getting that thinking starting to happen in the kids, and it pays off in your recess time and your lunch time. So I often, before we started teaching this, would have to solve problems when it was a nine kids playing a soccer game, and they wanted me to kick one kid out or something. But instead, now they are doing things like making one team's goal worth 2 points. Maybe they're lopsiding the nature of the field so that things that are slightly different for one team or another. So bat down's a fantastic game. We play it with bats, but sometimes we play it with rugby balls and kick it. We make it up as we go. I usually take actually about 4 or 5 sessions to play it and let it really run out. And pull it to pieces all over the place. You have to explain to the teachers near you that the kids are going to be running all over the place. There's no boundaries in this game, and it does look slightly like you're not really sure what you're doing. But it's a fantastic game. It works every time. Okay, Changeup, similar sort of thing. Changeup's a basketball kind of invasion game. It starts off with 3 against 1, and you're trying to get 7 passes. If you get 7 passes, you get another person comes in as a defender. So it becomes 3 against 2. And you're trying to get to 14. If you get to 14, another defender comes in and it becomes 3 against 3. And if you get to 21, it's a point. And you stop and you swap over and the ball position changes. The other really cool thing about this game, though, is that every time you get a new defender, your space doubles. So the best way to set this out is a 4 square, 4 little squares made up into a 1 big square. You start by playing in 1 little quarter, 3 against 1. As you make that 7th pass, you earn the 2nd square, and as you make that 14th pass, you earn the other 2. Okay, I hope that makes some sense, but lots you can talk about in here. So things like what often happens is as they go into the new space, they don't use the space they started in, and so they don't actually take advantage of the extra space. So you've got to teach this idea of a long pass on the 7th pass or the 14th. The real good stuff in here, though, is that because there's 30 kids in your class or 40 or whatever, the teacher can't ref this. And so there's some real life skills in here about counting. Someone has to count for this game to work well. The best person to count is the 3rd defender, because they're not likely to get in very often. So whoever that 3rd defender in has to be confident, big, loud, yelling person. Excuse my ePals notification. Then the other skills that are really useful in here are talking about rotation of turns, because if you are the first defender on your turn and then you get a turn at having the ball and you have another go, you're not going to be the first defender again. It's just not fair. Someone in your little team of 3 was 3rd defender. There has to be a little rotation of things, and you want the kids to start realizing that and being able to explain it. So anyway, those couple of games there are examples, I guess, of we'll just go back a step. Examples of talking about what matters. So we're messing around with rules, systems, court size, that sort of thing, to bring about conversations of sharing, taking turns, all that sort of thing. I could probably go in a bit more. With systems for inclusion, all I really do is look at different ways of taking turns. So I heard someone earlier today talking about how could you teach team skills through a target throwing game. So the best way for me to share what I do there, I guess, is what I do is I play a normal target game where one person has all the beanbags and they get to throw 4 of them while people wait. Then I get them to throw 1 each, so no one waits. You throw 1, move to the back of the line, another person throws 1, and then I play one where they all stand side by side and they throw all of them at once. And that's just looking at structure of a target game, and then we compare it on the Hawara spiderweb again. So a version where one person throws all 3 is really good for challenge, because you can correct and you can change your technique and your skill. Really hopeless for social. Well, maybe the kids will think different things. You could end up with one person really involved and 3 people daydreaming, or you might end up with 3 kids really interested and motivated if you've got a good scoring system. Both of them are probably scoring physically, and some of them though will score differently for fun. So if there's a really good game where they all stand side by side and they all throw at once and they all have a bit of a laugh about where things went, that's high on fun, and it doesn't matter what the kids say. Whatever they put, they just back it up with a reason, and it works. So basically the idea of the Hawara unit is to compare different versions of games, putting yourself in other people's shoes, and ultimately creating a game that the kids think is perfect. That's probably the simplest way to work. I have put a resource on the Tozzle that's got about 18 of these sort of cards. And so they're sort of they're with the game-centered thinking, small groups, lots of games going on, teacher roaming around and just stopping one game at a time, all that sort of TGfU sort of thinking. But they also include some of the sort of black hat questioning, what sort of thing would the teacher talk about? Okay, so the second unit is one called active improve, and it's the idea that the teacher doesn't have to dream up the thing that the kids want or should get better at. The teacher doesn't even have to recognize it or notice it, which I think is where often in the past we've done these full-on checklists and recognized when kids aren't stepping forward and pointing at a target and all that sort of thing. This is really just a real different way of thinking about it. What this unit works is sort of 5 weeks where the teacher is teacher directed, and then 5 weeks where the kids are in charge. And so in those first 5 weeks, we unpack individual skills, recreational activities, and sports. Let me just see what the next slide is before I keep going. Yeah, okay. So what happens is that the teacher puts on display a whole bunch of individual skills, maybe cartwheels, rolling a hoop, whatever, juggling. And the teacher kind of models this idea that if you're going to get better at individual skills, you try it, you watch someone who's really good, you give it another go. You might do some chaining where you break the skill up and make a little rhyme to yourself and say how you're going to go, like what is it, shot put, sort of clean palm, dirty cheek sort of stuff. Make up some sort of little memory prompt, and that's handy. And so the teacher has talked through individual skills. We've done a few sort of rotation examples, and we've created this little chart on the wall of how to get better at an individual skill. I'll skip recreation for a minute. When we go to sports, same thing. Teacher will just play some TGfU sort of sport-based activities. And the difference is, though, that we actually teach the kids the TGfU cycle so that they understand the sequence that the teacher is making them go through, that they've played a game, that they've analysed sort of where the good places are in the game, what's the point of the game, where's the scoring and all that sort of stuff, what are the tactics, what are the decision making, what skills do I need, and how do I get better at it, and all that sort of thing. And it's become explicit to the kids. We're talking sort of 8 years old and up. If I'm doing this sort of thing with younger, and I have taught this just this year actually, with younger kids, all we do is we play, teach, play. And the kids understand that if it's a sport, we play the game, then we teach a little bit of it, then we go back and play. Okay, so in this website that I've got, this is just a Wix site. Again, the cards that are on the Tozzle, I've just put them up there for people to think about. Okay, so this has taken about 3 weeks. We have done sort of a week and a half, sort of three lessons on individual skills, 3 lessons on sports, and Then we do some of the sort of recreational, adventure-based learning, team building sort of stuff, so that we point out to the kids that all physical activity includes things more than sport, that there's lots of other things in there. And so by halfway through the term, the kids have experienced all three main types of activity, and then they're asked to choose something that they want to get better at. And if I can go back to the very front slide, that one, this is the sort of thing that's going on. So in a class, I don't know, maybe over here is a good example. You got sort of, this is one class, 4 different activities going on. And if you think about the TGfU categories, they won't fit one category. This was with year 2, so 6 years old, and the teacher involved here was actually running it as an action station. So she was actually inside teaching maths at this time, and these kids were just outside working through their own little improvement project, and they were having conferences as they came back into the room, type of thing. And obviously these play buttons, this is a screenshot, but they were using a bit of tech to prove that they were being involved. Higher up, this is a junior high kind of thing. So a couple of kids picking paddle tennis. These guys are completing like a little personal journal. But in that class, there would have been 3, 4, 5 different things going on. Some of them sport-based, some of them recreation, some of them individual skills. And so the idea is that that the sport and getting ready for the sport isn't the main point. The main point of this unit is to build the attitude of perseverance and reflectiveness and awareness that they are in fact improving, and recognizing that by improving, their sense of haora is also becoming enhanced. So that the first unit, the learning about haora, is being carried through into the learning about improvement. Hope that makes sense. It's probably similar to something that you guys do. So what have I got there? Then there's these 2 other units that I haven't worked through with other groups of teachers. So these 2 are really just my little babies, and I haven't fleshed them out into websites or any of that sort of stuff. Have taught them a lot. So this idea of engaging the community, you guys, everyone knows the sports ed model. Someone was sharing one of the big models out there earlier today. So the sports ed model is pretty standard. You put on a bit of a sporting event and engage the kids in becoming the organisers and so on. For me, the one bit that's missing there are the jobs. As these kids become adults, they're not likely, well, some of them will, they're not really likely to become professional sports people. They may volunteer at a local club and get things happening, and a few of them will do it naturally. The jobs in event management, if you like, are often around accountability, around reporting on the effectiveness of an event. So what we do is try and simulate that. So we use TGfU typical bunch of games. So let's say it's a basketball kind of tournament. So I'll teach all this sort of normal TGfU invasion games, basketball stuff. But around it, we don't just add the sports ed stuff, the insignia and the certificates and the creating an admin team and all that. We also add a level of connecting with the community. So there's a group of kids will go down to our local businesses, our nearby shops, have a little chat about marketing and advertising and what would they be happy to be involved. Then they'll make posters and so on that are kind of connecting to the real places in the school community, so that when an event happens, the tournament happens, those kids have to have it in their head that they're going to have to report back to those businesses. How many people played, how many parents came along, how many readers were there in the school newsletter that had the photos of the event, how many hits were there on the website, all that sort of stuff. So that as these 10-year-olds become 15-year-olds and ultimately into a world where they may choose a job in the physical activity industry, they've got some kind of understanding around the way funding works. Often organisations have to access funding, and people are quite good at asking for the money, asking for support to do things, without realizing that they are going to have to report back and be accountable. And so that's the extra bit, the added value, I guess, of the unit. And it just becomes a really big thing. So it's PE, but it's actually literacy and a fair bit of social sciences. Lots of stuff in there. Okay, and then the fourth unit's a really cool one. And again, one of the jobs that kids may find themselves doing is in this sort of health industry, where it's all around making sure there's positive messages out there in the community, and that we're saturating our environment with positive messages. For us, it's our district health boards, our hospital sort of work, that there's an angle of our health boards that get involved here. What this unit really looks like for the kids is that they get a map of their school and the community, and they sort of highlight all the places they can play and be active. Then they investigate what activity is actually on offer, and our PE sessions are really just giving them a go. So there's no rhyme or reason. We just pick, they do touch rugby at that place, let's play touch rugby, and so on. So they just experience things, but wrapped around these physical lessons are discussions around, okay, how hard is it to get to that park? Is it safe? Is the road safe? How expensive is it to play that game? Is there a parent in our community that actually already goes there, and could we organise things? And then the kids are involved in making a map where it's effectively annotated, and it's got little arrows and little boxes explaining what's on offer and how much things cost. And they kind of promote it back to their own school community, and occasionally actually organise groups to get involved and play. So I don't know. That's probably what's next. Yeah, and this is just a few pictures of me and my world, really. So this is a little group of kids playing ripper rugby. Ripper rugby's a bit like flag footy, I think, would be the best example. So basically, they run until the tag is ripped off the side of their hip, and that's sort of like a tackle. And then once it's ripped, you must pass. In rugby and rugby league and ripper, you're not allowed to pass forward, so you have to pass the ball backwards, and you're only allowed six rips, and then it's a handover. Really simple game, and our kids, it's a bit like in Brazil with the soccer. Our kids are just naturally, they think this way. We've played or tried to play American football, and just the whole concept of throwing a ball forward for Kiwi kids is just really strange. It doesn't sit nicely. This is me and some friends. We were at a conference, and typical conference kind of behaviour. And this is me again. And what we were doing here, there's a cluster of schools get together, sort of 6 schools, and they've committed to work together in various ways. And what we were doing was using sport to show how you can play competitively, or you can come together and achieve something together, and it's more satisfying and more rewarding, perhaps. And so we're just using PE as a good vehicle to illustrate that. Up here, Hei Orangi Nāko, Hei Pi Kinga Waiora is what we call a whakatauki. It's basically a proverb. It underpins our thinking around physical education in New Zealand. It's the idea that getting great at a sport isn't really the point. It's about coming to terms with yourself, knowing what makes you feel good, what makes your hauora better, and knowing that if you have those sort of warm feelings and self-awareness, you will go on to achieve. So basically this here, positive feelings in your heart will enhance your sense of self-worth. That's a direct translation. So that is pretty much me. I don't know if there's any questions there, Will, or not. Probably people are half asleep.
I don't see any questions.
How long did we go for?
Let's see. We're at about 40 minutes, which is not bad. And I think when everybody wakes up here in the States and watches this, I think, like I said, we're game changers, Tim, and what we do, and the people that watch these are the teachers who will watch this, and they will, just like I've been watching, I will take this like we were talking about, I know Diana said it was a very interesting tool for reflection. I like
Yeah.
the visual aspect of that reflection that you had. You've got
That
four.
spider web has, it started off as sort of one lesson, just a thing I did once, and I've found uses for that thing all year. It's just, you
Yeah.
just use the same thing, and then you don't have to teach the kids what to do. They're used to it. They know it's the tool we use. The other one that we use quite a lot is a criteria matrix. It's basically just a list of like what makes a good game, easy to ref. It's in the tozzle there. There's a upload of it or download of it or something. What makes a good game? Easy to ref, simple to score, fun to play, sort of thing. And we just play 3-4 games and mark it, out of whatever, out of 4, out of 3. And we don't have too many different systems. We just use 1 or 2 things all year for different reasons.
Yeah. I'm big on reflection, and I also know sometimes kids don't like to write, and I did see the writing component, but it's a quick visualization. If I'm a teacher or if another student, being able to see that spider web up there, especially how
Yeah.
you had them colored, it's really cool. And I like how you eventually get the kids to create their own game, or within that game, how do we make it more appealing to everybody?
Yeah,
So
yeah, actually, I was going to say in there, one of the questions we use a lot when we're dealing with different versions of games is I get the kids to decide which game would suit which purpose. So, if it's going to be a game with your class against your parents, which version would work there compared to if it's a class against class, same age, same ability. That conversation is really interesting.
okay,
Because they get that their uncle who can hit a ball for miles, they don't want to play the same game against them. So how do they juggle it?
exactly.
Yeah.
So Coach Jerry on Tozzle has a question for you. He says, "Have you encountered situations with difficult learners with your units? And if so, how do you address this?" And then he has an example. It's like, kids who can't speak English well yet.
Yeah. Okay. My teaching is always with difficult difficult learners. I teach at low decile, and I've also taught at the bottom end of a streamed school where they ability group everyone. And this stuff, I know it sounds like you're pushing the boundaries, and it just rings their bells. With English as second language, the only solutions I've found are, buddying people up and doing things, and a bit of iPad sort of stuff generally helps. In terms of behavior, I think that whole TGfU thinking, where you have 4 or 5 games, 4 of them are going pretty well, and one might be going absolutely disastrously, that's where you spend your time. Overlaying all of this, I do quite a lot of Hallison stuff as well. So sometimes we'll just bring the whole group back together at the end, and we'll sort of reflect as a whole group where the lesson felt on that sort of social responsibility scale. And I've got a few golden rules with the kids as well, that by the end of the year, my aim is to be able to sit down in the middle of the PE lesson and for it to still work. And so we're on this kind of year-long journey with them, and that they see that as their achievement. If by the end of the year I'm able to be really not really involved, they see that as their success. With some of my hardest classes, what I've done is dumped in. It's mixing things up is probably the difference. I'll dump in adventure-based learning stuff in the middle of invasion game stuff. So we might have three groups going really well with invasion, and one game that's just not going well because of communication or something. We might just have one group completely change tack. And so when you're looking at the lesson, it's actually a real mixture of activity going on out there for different reasons. So it's, I guess, needs based. One thing I did with a really tough class was stop animation. So what we did is I explained the game, and I set up a little camera by the corner of the classroom and said I wasn't coming out, and they had to set it up. But I was recording every 5 seconds a photo of what was happening, and I went out about 10 minutes later and called them back in, and we watched it, and then they went out again. And so the aims weren't the game. The game was really nothing to do with it. It was just, photo evidence. It's as undeniable, really. So yes, I've had lots of PE. I expect PE to be difficult. It's you're putting kids in situations that are socially challenging and sometimes really embarrassing on a physical level. That they're out there in public demonstrating their abilities, and kids lose the plot. But a lot of what I work on is this idea of collective success. So the whole class think, if we have a fantastic TGfU lesson with 4 or 5 games going and it's just really humming, we'll at the end of the thing just go, man, that worked, eh? Because the kids know the model. It's not a secret. They actually understand what we're trying to do. So they also recognize when it went really well. But no, I'm not saying that every lesson doesn't have someone have a problem, because most lessons, to be honest, there's some kid that struggles in one way or another.
Do you ever find kids that just don't want to engage in the activities? I know here in the States, we have kids that do that. They just, I don't want to do this today.
Yeah, I think what I've found, and that's really what's justified, I guess, my thinking, is that, in a term we do 20 lessons. And if it's just a series of invasion game lessons where there's some reflection that's all about their own physical literacy, that's not that meaningful for the kids. But what I've found is if I put this big purpose that at the end of the term we're going to come up with the perfect game and we're going to play it with the class next door, there's just this sort of, you're on a project. And so each term, we've got term 1, we're creating a perfect game. Term 2, we are building up a reflective journal. Term 3, we're creating a tournament, and we're going to report to a business. Term 4, we are making a map and publishing it. It is more engaging for them because it's not just the teacher teaching the sport that teacher likes. Right. It's somehow a shared project. Definitely more engaging than the way I was doing it before anyway. But, like everything, there's still kids that don't want to do it. In fact, the ones who get turned off the most are the sportiest kids who really wish that you were just out there refereeing a game today. Yeah. And that's absolutely not what I'm doing.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're the ones that want to dominate the game and beat everybody. Yeah.
And so one of the ways I'd explain that to them is that in a science class, the teacher might ask you to do an experiment, but stop you as soon as the evidence is visible. And I describe PE the same. So I might stop a game before the game's finished, before we've had a winner, as soon as what the point we were trying to make has become obvious. Right. And it takes it takes about 10 weeks of doing it before the kids stop getting annoyed by you doing it. You've got to convince them that it's the right thing to do. And eventually they get it.
But, it's funny, that's a behavior just change too, because, it's not all, I know everybody it's all about the win. It's all about, who comes out on top. But, in life, that's not a good approach to take in life, because you're going to step on a lot of people and you're going to be lonely. And I don't like that. So
so a lot of our stuff is about reflection from another point of view, from someone else's point of view. That's really the big driver.
Well, awesome.
Cool. That's probably about my 2 cents.
And that's a good 2 cents.
Awesome.
And like I said, Tim, I really appreciate you spending this last hour sharing what you've been doing, and it's just your passion for kids. I just think we're all game changers who are just trying to make our classes a little better. And I know that anybody that watches this will be able to take several pieces out of this and really allow their kids to see a different part of just not winning and losing. There's so many different parts to being physically active that benefit us for a lifetime. So
yeah, no, I agree. I think it's really cool. Oh, the bit that's missing for us here, I get in New Zealand as an organisation, I think a bit like this, how do you say it, the Physpedagogy group. We're struggling to find, I guess, an online presence. There are people trying to make something happen, but I'm not sure that they've got quite the vision of what's in place here. So it's been really, really cool to be involved.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm going to say a few closing words. And again, thank you, Tim. Awesome time sharing with you. And I hope the folks out there, as they watch this, will, again, just take these things and make it their own. So
Exactly.
whether it's good morning, good afternoon, or good night, I'm William Bodie signing off for the Phys Ed Summit.
Thanks very much.